Loveys, and hello, Mr. Mark Bederow.
How are you?
I'm great. Today is July 7th, 2025, and we are on the heels of a day in court for Aiden Carney, aka Turtleboy, and one of your clients who, got to tell you, Mr. Bederow, it was quite a privilege to hear you argue or just have your oral presentation today to the court. Impeccable. You and Bradle, Dream Team 2.0. I'm excited. I'm ecstatic to have you here. And I shot my shot and you said, I'll show up because I don't have Nesson.
I can't believe they don't have Nesson where I'm staying. Yeah, so no Nesson. So I was going to go home, but the rush hour traffic in the Boston, New York corridor is awful. So I'll ship out of here like 5 a.m. tomorrow. Get home.
How long does it take you? 4.5-ish?
Yeah, 4.5. But if you leave at the wrong time, like today around 4:30 or so, 6.
Oh,
I mean,
gosh.
you get stuck in. You're gonna hit some of the Boston rush hour, and New York is always just a disaster, almost any time of night. But 6:30, 7:30, George Washington Bridge, awful. So, yeah, tomorrow.
So tomorrow morning, yes. Will you get a continental breakfast?
No. There's coffee in the building.
Mm-hmm.
There's Brugger's down the street on what is that? The VFW Parkway there in Hill. There's Egg McMuffins on the Framingham rest stop in the Mass Pike.
I love that. And Brugger's bagels are still, to me, top tier. I love a Brugger's bagel. Do you?
Not bad. A little bit snobbish though. New York area bagels are the best, as you know. So Brugger's, you don't see much of that stuff. There is a couple places in Manhattan, like Essa Bagel is unbelievable. The old H&H Bagel, of course, was the big one. But Brugger's is not bad for chains, but it's still a chain bagel. It's not, it's okay.
Well, listen, okay, I'm not a New Yorker, so you will have to school me on that as well, because there are specific areas that I like. If I'm in Lowell, I like a boot mill, which is like just a sandwich that we make, which is like it's just a boot mill sandwich that like bacon, egg, and cheese. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why we're talking about breakfast sandwiches, but I apologize.
I mentioned Egg McMuffins on the Turnpike. That's all that's open at 5 a.m. So
I know. Oh my gosh. Well, so, okay, I don't want to cross any lines as of what you're able to discuss, but today, 10 out of 10 would recommend. I watched it first with Mike on his channel, and then I went back and I watched Melanie with her commentary, which is always the best. So
is it video? They told me there's no video, even though they were filming it. There's no video. It's all audio, right?
It was all audio. Yeah. So I was just listening.
I don't know. They had a guy filming, but I don't know how that works.
Yeah, that's weird. Hopefully they'll get their S together, because I think it should be televised. Because if they're in there, you might as well, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, the guy was shooting video. I don't know why there's no video, but that's way above my pay grade. But yeah, whatever.
Well, I saw you outside of court afterwards. We'll talk about that with Jess Machado. She did a great job. But overall, for you, what did you think? I know that you guys came out 100% in your favor. There was great orders, and I know that the discovery has been a pain in the actual patootie. You've asked for shit repeatedly for months, and they keep pushing it off like only the Commonwealth does. But I loved that you brought up also the new Rule 14 for Massachusetts. And I was hoping that after you give like your overall from today, we could go through what the new Rule 14 is for us non-legal folk.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, this case is, or at least the older ones, have been going on for almost 2 years, and nothing's happening. I mean, there's nothing at all that's really happening. and we're done. I mean, there comes a point where we're done. So pedal to the metal, enough of the bullshit. Let's
Mhm.
go and turn over the evidence. Tell us you don't have it. Live with the consequences. But either way, enough. So we're just at a point where it's taking too long, and this is not how criminal trials are supposed to work. They are complicated cases. I get it. But, there are discovery obligations that prosecutors have, and you have to follow them. And you need to follow them within the time constraints. And as I said, we're going on months and months and months, discovery demand after discovery demand, and it's bits and pieces, piecemeal this, and just, these cases are flawed on their face.
Right.
You see what's happening. I mean, you obviously know what happened to the underlying case. It's gone.
Right.
See what's happening to all the police officers that are involved in this case, whether they be witnesses or, alleged victims. It's all cratering and falling apart. And, it's all of this is just, this shouldn't be happening. So enough is enough. It's time to shit or get off the pot.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a time during today, I felt that like the judge was in a wonderful mood. And don't you love getting in front of a judge that was fanning? Like literally, I don't know, but I could feel it through the vibes that
I
they.
don't know.
Listen, I'm telling you, there was a Mr. Bederow thrown out. I go, oh.
Well, Judge Doolin is everyone's favorite out there. That's true. He's a great personality, incredible judicial temperament, fundamentally fair, lets everybody say what they want to say, and appreciates real lawyers and lawyering. And I haven't been there in a while, as you know. I don't go to everything. So I probably haven't been to a court appearance since the fiasco with the D&E pizza nonsense in February, March, whatever it was.
Yeah.
So, whatever, he's being polite, but it's appreciated. It's always nice to be in front of judges like that.
Yeah, I thought it was fantastic. And is there any way that you could explain to me specifically, Mr. Bederow, why was Cosgrove, like, how did you guys take the opposite stand when we were talking, or if you're allowed to talk about it, for the impoundment of documents, right? There is now a request for the defense, for Aiden's, your team, to say, hey, now since the Reed trial has been concluded, it makes sense for this to be public because you can't just hide behind ongoing litigation. And yet Cosgrove like doubled and tripled down in, oh no, we believe that it needs to be impounded now more than ever. Can you explain that to me at all?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a false equivalence.
Yeah.
Karen's case has something to do with it. That, the fact that this comes from material that we disclosed in the Karen Reed case is not a basis to impound.
Mhm.
It is not the law that prosecutors can say, I will disclose to you what I am legally obligated to disclose if you agree to it being impounded. I mean, that's not how the Constitution works. That's not how Rule 14 works. That's not how anything works. But again, the culture in Norfolk County apparently is that's how we do things. And if you want your discovery, you'll do this. And, you want the discovery. So there is a pragmatic approach which says that you just, in the short term, agree to it to get what you're entitled to and deal with it later. And, we tried that thinking, they'll do the right thing and it'll be a short-term thing, but that's not how it's working. So enough. We agree to nothing. We'll consent to nothing.
I love that.
Give us what we're entitled to,
Mhm.
make your argument and whatever. And it's all going to get unimpounded for the simple on the next date, for the simple reason there's no basis to you can't presumptively impound things. It's actually the exact opposite. But the way they do it there is they presumptively impound anything that, well, it's from the Karen Reed case. So, we can't let anybody know about it. And the fact that this hurts or is embarrassing or makes, disgraced, terminated police officers or other people, civilians or otherwise, feel embarrassed, it's understandable, but that's not a legal basis to impound materials. There has to be a legitimate safety issue, a privacy issue,
Right.
a prejudice. You could go on and on. There are reasons why things could be impounded, or in other states, what they call sealed. But the fact that this is potentially embarrassing is not it. And the reality is, their own witnesses are not helping them. Okay. Some of this stuff was impounded under the theory that we have to protect witnesses, like Michael Proctor. Well, first of all, a police officer doesn't need to be protected.
Amen.
That never should have happened. But beyond that, look at Michael Proctor. He is at this point, a public figure whose conduct has made himself the news as it relates to this case, and of course Karen's case. Look what he did recently. He made the very foolish decision to go on a press tour, and it was awful. It was cringe. It was unimpressive. He looked foolish. He sounds stupid. He sounds disingenuous. He sounds ridiculous. But the point is, he's clearly not afraid to talk about this. So if he makes a conscious choice on his own to put this out in the public realm, then the prosecution should not be hiding text messages and emails from him, which I won't talk about the substance of them because they are impounded right now. So I can't do that. But admittedly, when they are unimpounded, will be very embarrassing for him, the prosecution, and, whatever. And that relates to other witnesses as well. And, the public does have a right to know. Cases are presumptively open to the public. And for whatever reason, the cases with Aiden are presumptively dark instead of light. And we're just not going to tolerate that anymore.
Yeah. And as we have said in other cases, and also in this one, is that the greatest disinfectant is bringing everything to light, right? And if there's nothing to hide, then there should be nothing to hide, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, there's nothing to hide, and there's no legal basis to impound materials, just again because the prosecution feels that it may not be helpful to them. They brought the case, not us. We didn't choose to be here. They did. This is their decision, and the evidence is what the evidence is, and they have to deal with it unless there's a legal basis to impound or seal it, and there isn't. And the stuff today that it was mentioned what it was in court, emails, text messages from civilians going to prosecutors that are, we believe, would demonstrate, what we have alleged is a basically frame job, a setup. We're entitled to explore that. And the fact that we may be right or wrong based on that material is not a reason to say, well, we're going to impound it. It doesn't work. That's not what the law is. So it's just, we made a conscious decision. We're done with this, agreeing to the rules because, to them it's Chinatown, and this is the price you have to pay to get evidence that you're legally entitled to. And we're just not going to play that game. We're going to get what we are entitled to, and you take your best shot, make your argument for impoundment. We'll make ours, and then the judge will do what the judge does. But the reality is they have no argument. They don't.
Right.
Okay. The fact that Proctor would be embarrassed is not an argument. The fact that a civilian, doesn't want evidence to come out, it's not how it works. And you can't remove the fact that all of these people voluntarily went on TV weeks ago to give their version of events. They don't get to cut and paste, pick and choose what comes out. If we're going to air it out publicly, then let's air it out publicly. And that's for the public to decide. There were many other things that, we even could have said today. It wasn't necessary, but, you go back to the statement that you and I talked about a couple of weeks ago, and I'm not going to swear again like that. That was, whatever. That was, shouldn't have done that.
No, 10 out of 10. Stop it. You're here
Whatever,
with me.
whatever. The point is, whatever. That I'm just telling you a joke. That's the point is, part of that statement, as you know, was a smear attack
Yes.
on the client and blaming him for an acquittal. And, we very much could have made reference today to that and said another reason why this information that has been impounded should be released, because if they're going to smear him, knowing that he has potential jurors that are hearing this, if you're going to play that game with potential jurors, then let's get it all out. And the public may very much want to see what, those messages were and who they were sent to and what they contained, and make a judgment how that impacts their view of, a disgraced former state trooper who is by all accounts corrupt and biased. And, does that extend to this case? Well, you make your own decision. So we'll see.
Yes. Well, thank you very much for going over that. I thought it was very interesting to also hear. It was like alarming to me, the 5,000 pages, which that's a lot of discovery today, right? Or no?
Yeah, look, obviously we're happy to get what you get, but, and I don't want to get into too many details other than to say, and you may have heard this as well, it's in the public record, so whatever. This is not new. We've been demanding and asking for this discovery month after month after month. And, you get piecemeal type stuff. It doesn't work that way. That's just not how the law. I mean, suppose not this case, but in other cases, suppose the client was incarcerated.
Yeah.
What are you supposed to do in Norfolk County? Rot in jail while you wait for discovery? I mean, there has to be a point where the prosecution is told shit or get off the pot. And there are consequences for, staying on the pot without pooping.
Yeah. Got to get an enema, and you gave it to him today. All right. That's what I felt. Now there was the mention of, Cosgrove kind of debated back about the Kate Peter recording that he said, and you were like, hey, listen, if either it exists or it doesn't exist, but I need to know what you're talking about, because people alluded to it, not us. So he did say that it was in the discovery, included in an email that he handed over today. Can you confirm or deny that?
I can't, only because it's under impoundment.
Yeah, sorry.
But there'll be a lot to say about it in due course, but no.
Okay.
I kind of feel for Cosgrove. I actually like Mr. Cosgrove, just for what it's worth. He stepped into a situation that this case was a hot mess, unorganized, just a freaking mess of no organization when he came in. And, at least up to now, he hasn't fully cleaned it up. That's true. And, I'm not giving him an excuse. I'm just stating that, it is what it is. The state of the case is a mess. But in terms of what we got today, I can't talk about what it is because it's under temporary impoundment, because that's how they do it. Although I get the very strong impression that the judge recognizes our position, and he's giving him an opportunity to frame some arguments. There are no arguments, and I wouldn't even be surprised if they white flag this issue and just say we have no argument.
Okay. That makes perfect sense to me.
The problem is, though, like, their default position is, well, let's impound it because we don't want to be embarrassed because, this guy, the client, obviously likes to talk publicly, says a lot of things, and, well, we don't want him to do that. And I understand they don't want him to do that, but them not wanting him to do it doesn't translate to making rules that have no basis in law to prevent the public from getting access to. And by the way, that's the victim in this scenario. The victim is not Aiden. The victim is the public. Public court proceedings are presumptively public. That public has a right to know. And I mean, look at Karen's case. Look,
Yes.
look at all the emphasis on corruption and incompetence and all that. And this case, is part and parcel of that. The public has a right to know, and thus far, the prosecutors have been doing everything and anything they can to shed darkness, not light, on this situation. And it's exactly what they did in Karen's case.
Absolutely. And that it is so scary to me, Mr. Bederow, because I think to myself how public these two specific cases are, being the Reed case, and now coming into Aiden's case. And to think what they're trying to pull and to, shift and hide the ball again, in my opinion, it makes me very sad or very concerned for, like you mentioned before, people that might be in prison in Norfolk County that don't have any publicity or things that are going on, because if they have the balls to do it in such high profile cases, just imagine what goes on with people who are not represented, and who are not reaping the benefits of our public knowledge, because we would help, or we would want to know what's going on, but if we don't know about it, how are we to know about it?
Well, that exactly. I mean, I totally. I mean, if you do it on cases that are this public, this high profile, that's pretty brazen. That's pretty bold. And you have to think that, what do they do when there is no light shining on the case, or they don't have lawyers that they bring in at whatever it is, high cost, very experienced, this and that. Yeah, no, I mean, I would be more worried. People should be more worried about those cases
Yes.
that are under the radar, where the people, have public defenders, or who may be overworked and don't have the time to dedicate to it, or are in jail and don't have the ability or access to publicity or whatever. I mean, it's, I mean, again, I don't know what's going on there. I only can go by my own experience. I'm only familiar with, at least really familiar with, two cases, and they've both been just disasters in terms of transparency, disclosure of evidence, fairness. And 2 out of 2 is, that's 100%, and it's not good. You see it going on in some other high profile cases that, I mean, I've only watched sporadically, but I've recently watched a little bit of this Walsh thing.
Oh, going to be a shit show.
Not in great detail, but I will tell you what little I've seen of that recently.
Yeah.
There is a code red major problem looming over the admissibility of his devastating searches, because what little I know, and again, I want to be careful because I'm watching snippets and whatever.
Yeah.
But there appears to be a lot of fudging of facts and truth in that case, which relate to the evidence they possess at the time they searched the phone and got warrants, and how they interpreted consent. And you get a judge who is going to be beholden to the law. You may have a real problem on a person who appears to be guilty.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the, what you see. I mean, I respect the presumption of innocence and will afford it. But, those Google searches happen. No one disputes that they happened.
Right.
Are impossible to explain or put in a different light, but they may very well end up being inadmissible because of more Norfolk County State Police shenanigans.
Yeah. Oh, it makes your stomach turn. And of course, that is an exact opposite of our position, or my position, and yours too, of the Reed case, of like, oh, you got like the mishaps that were done to tunnel vision, versus them being so sloppy and just like doing things, not following their own standards of practice. Like, you have freaking reasons and policies and procedures and the way that this goes. Like, this isn't a fucking pardon me, it isn't for us to, use at your own discretion. It is specific constitutionally that you must follow things, and you're in a way in which is, appropriate for all humans. And Walsh if he had his rights violated, that sucks, because he sucks.
Brian Walsh is potentially the test case that will really, really test your belief or non-belief in the Constitution, the rule of law process, because, again, I'd have to study up a little more on it, but it looks not good. And, I really should follow it more. I was wondering why the lawyer he had at the time apparently has not testified as a defense witness in this hearing, which I think would be like a no-brainer if I'm the defense attorney. So I want to be cautious. Maybe I don't know the full story, but what little I know about the state police's interpretation of consent and what consent really is and how they think that they can modify it through a verbal agreement, and that a lawyer would not demand that in writing. That's impossible. It's just impossible. I'm not sure why she's not testifying. Not sure I understand that.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of now all of the cases, there was some big doings today. We found out that a couple more Norfolk DA office troopers assigned have been rehomed. And this is Yuri and Jachiko, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Now, when I clutched my pearls and clenched my butt, Mr. Bederow, over that, I said, when Alan Jackson had his exclusive interview with Aiden on Saturday, first of all, just wanted to shout out Aiden. Mazel tov on that one, my friend. That was so good. And 90 minutes, I physically was like dropping dead. I was like, oh my gosh, he's doing it. And he keeps going, and he kept talking, and their conversation and exchange was really magnificent. It was a great conversation.
It was an outstanding interview, just outstanding.
And but it didn't feel like, I'm doing this, and you know what I mean? It's like, it's good. It's a good, I like that. I prefer that. Just let it flow, babe,
Yep.
And so, okay. He is talking about, he gave so much, which we can go into afterwards, but it was just very telling to me that now on Monday, after this interview had occurred, and he is saying that, like, I don't get nervous. I make other people nervous. I said, oh. And then, we have these new changes. Now, Mass State Police has been very well aware of the behaviors of Yuri and of DeChico. I mean, for Christ's sake, they got 5 days or 3 days of their PTO, which they have unlimited friggin' PTO. So that was like, that didn't even make sense if you went back to their old disciplinary. So what in the world do you interpret that as meaning? What else is going on?
So first of all, when, the comment about, I don't get nervous, I make people nervous, I chuckled at that for the simple reason, to me, that was tantamount to like the Walter White famous speech. Everything to me is Breaking Bad.
Yes, it is. Or Better Call Saul.
Right. That was the equivalent of the I am the one who knocks speech. If you're Breaking Bad people, you'll know what I'm talking about, when Walter White goes full hardcore Heisenberg, if you will, to his wife and gives that famous speech about, I'm not the one knocking, I'm the one who knocks.
Yes.
As far as the timing, I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to sit there and say that the state police are literally reacting to an incredible conversation between Aiden and like a really powerful, incredible attorney, someone I have, as you know, the most just utmost respect for as an attorney. I'd like to think it was related, just because that would be incredible. I don't know, but to me, it feels like the colonel, the trial's over, right? So they have to deal with it. And I feel like he's gone into his Michael Corleone mode and he's settling all family business.
Oh.
And, you know, Proctor got canned during the trial or before, whatever it was. Buchanan, I think, is on the path to hell. It doesn't sound good for him. I did read I mean, I'm interested in what happens to him. But I also think that this is not just Buchanan and his conduct that was adjudicated earlier. This relates to his testimony at the second trial, which was disgraceful. He was an absolute embarrassment to the Massachusetts State Police. And I would not be surprised if ultimately he's on a termination path. I don't know anything. That means nothing that I think that's appropriate, but he perjured himself at the first trial about the inverted video. He did. Let's just call it what it is. He lied about the video. And when you mislead, that's lying. So that's problem number one. His tone and demeanor and arrogance in the second trial was, I didn't think it would be possible, but it was worse than the first trial. This idea that he would not acknowledge Proctor being a lead investigator was just absurd.
Yeah.
His description about what a great investigation that Proctor conducted was embarrassing. His explanation about the text messages and his reaction to them, I believe, was also perjured testimony. No serious person believes that when Proctor responded to messages about no nudes and things like that, and he's given the thumbs up, that was an acknowledgement. I mean, dude, get over yourself with the nonsense.
Right.
Nobody believes that. So, he did no investigation, because if Proctor's not the lead investigator, then I guess he was. I mean, what else? If that's the way the game is going to be played. So I would suspect that his current situation is a combination of things. His already poor conduct from a year ago and being on thin ice, and his just utterly disgraceful and arrogant tone in the second trial. So that's what I think it is.
Yeah. And what do we think about DeChico then?
They all have to go. I think I think if they're fumigating the unit, I think that division of the state police is like a metastasizing cancer. I mean, it has been for years. It needed to be.
Yeah,
that's right. And it needed to be fumigated, and all of you need to go. And I assume at some point they all will. Not all get fired. I mean, they're not, I don't think you can just assume every single one in that entire unit is bad, but anybody connected to those text messages who did nothing, connected to these cases and all of these things, you need to go, for the simple reason that the public has to have confidence in, its law enforcement. And what do you think the confidence meter is in terms of the public's confidence in the Norfolk DA and the state police in that office? I'm going to guess around 6 or 7%. And those people are like a certain class of people who live in Canton. I mean, other than that, I don't think anybody would say that they're overly satisfied with the people in power in Norfolk County.
Totally agreed, Mr. Bederow. But then I also think, I mean, and maybe it has nothing to do with it, I'm speculating completely, but also when we had the jurors come out and talk, there was very firm from juror 11, from the foreman, and from the other juror that went on TMZ, or I believe he said it too, that the most jarring testimony came from Kelly Dever and Yuri Buchanan. Like that they were saying why this behavior, their behavior on the stand, their tone, their tenor, their response, and their defensiveness came off very sus to them, as the kids say. It was sus. They were like, what are you doing? Because you should just be facts. This is what led to this, is what led to this, and not doing the spin. You don't need to spin when you did things correctly, right?
Yeah, I mean, I
was just wondering if that had anything.
I look at Buchanan Endeavor as totally different.
Oh.
Buchanan is just a sleazeball. I mean, he's just. I think he has an allergy to the truth. I think that his arrogance. I don't think he's a dumb guy at all.
No.
I think he probably used to be a really good detective. Actually, it's kind of sad, but I think his arrogance and getting fat and lazy in that position and shaking people down about rubber ducks and this and intimidating people over that. I think he just lost his way. He fell into that culture, and his conduct in both of these trials is awful. Again, I think he perjured himself at both trials. I think his demeanor was terrible. I don't think he has an ounce of credibility. He's a problem. He needs to go. Dever is just a sad case of, I mean, she got squeezed. I mean, she's just a dumb kid who got in a bad position and had a choice to make. And, there are certain points in life where you come to the fork in the road and you have to take inventory of, is this really what I want? What am I going to do? And she made a bad choice. I mean, she obviously, when interviewed by the FBI, told them the truth. She didn't sugarcoat it. She told them what happened.
Yeah.
And then when she realized, wait a minute, they want me to testify, they want me to do this, and I want to be a good police officer. And, she got the facts of life explained to her by apparently the commissioner of, one of the largest departments in the country. And she came to a fork in the road. Am I with the corruption, or am I better than this? And she's young. I'm not defending her. I'm just stating the facts as they are. She went with, I'm going with the department, and it was awful. And, she has to suffer the consequences. She embarrassed herself. She embarrassed the Boston Police Department. She embarrassed everyone. I mean, she embarrassed her family. Her behavior in that trial and her tone was so just cringe and so sad, really pathetic. I mean, I don't even think you can hate her. I think you just look at her and you say, God, where did you go wrong, woman?
I pity her almost.
Yes,
yeah.
Like you could have, and it's not easy as a young police officer to say, I'm not going to do this, because, that can ruin your career.
Yeah.
If you're being asked to do something, and that can follow you around. It's not easy to go against the blue wall, as they say. But nevertheless, she made an atrocious choice and then doubled down on it with her attitude, which really, on top of it, she could have been sympathetic in some way.
Oh, of course. Had she gone a different route in how her
Yes.
behavior
And
was.
instead, what she revealed herself to be is unstable. And then you get to the point where you say, should this
It was
person?
psychological. It was so wild, Mr.
Well,
Bederow. Like, I had a false memory.
The difference is not even just the false memory. I mean, her attitude. This is somebody who carries a gun and a badge, who gets that unhinged at the most minimal provocation.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a gun carrying police officer who lost her shit, on what essentially was cross examination, even though it really wasn't. And, I don't know if she was put on assignment. I don't know if she left because she needed a mental health break. But either way, it's probably not the kind of person that ought to be running around into, very hot situations where you have to make an instant decision in a matter of seconds. Am I, pulling a firearm, and what am I doing with it? So she probably did ruin her career, and Google is forever, that's the reality. And that video of her testifying is going to be there forever. And I'm sure someday she's going to look at that and regret it, because she looked absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, she did. And, if there was some sort of emotional breakdown, because she is, as we've learned, been on medical leave since, I believe, June 23rd of 2025 from Boston Police Department. I understand that it can be difficult to have press around you, but like, not for nothing, Kelly, like, you weren't that big of a deal. So stop. Like, yes, you were news, and you were definitely not kindly looked at for being, in my opinion, a little bit of a whiny bitch. and a lying whiny bitch, which is the worst. But other than that, like, I don't think that there were people like threatening her, or that she was feeling unsafe. It's just like, if people don't like you on the internet, like, log off, go touch some grass, hang out, go to Laconia. I don't know, go fucking do something, in my opinion. But like the leave of absence, I thought that was quite telling.
Well, I mean, again, I don't know if it's her doing or their doing, but I accept the fact that she's probably very stressed and humiliated and embarrassed and upset. I don't have as much sympathy as others might have because she created it. But I mean, I do have some degree of empathy that she's become, I mean, people, what do they say about her? Dever, don't call me Dever. I mean, that's what she's become because she came off so unhinged. I mean,
Yeah.
she testified like a child.
Yeah. She's very Veruca Salt to me. I don't know. I see it. When Brian put that up, I was like, oh my gosh. It was perfect for like my brain. I said, I want it now, Daddy. I was like, oh.
People have moments, they say things, they can be childlike, they can have these outbursts, but you're judged by a different standard when you're on the street with a gun and a badge. And she demonstrated her lack of fitness for that, in my view.
Well, and I feel like women, honestly, for both sides of this
It makes
case,
it worse.
it
Absolutely.
makes it worse. I feel like Dr. LaPasada, I feel like Dr. Russell got her ass handed to, like, tried to. And that, like, strong women have risen and, face the adversity, and others kind of collapse.
Dever was not a strong woman.
No,
Unfortunately. She was a petulant child.
Yeah. Yeah. But like you were saying, though, how interesting, because had she played it correctly, now this is a bold take, hot take, lovies, but had she played that correctly and said something along the lines of, hey, I really thought that I saw that, but then when it came out, of this time, however she could have done it, just been so much softer with it.
Yeah.
And said, I am sorry. I am so sorry. I believed, like, whatever. She could have, like, I believe, garnered way more, like, a little bit of more positive out. People would have still been like, okay, you're a lying bitch, but it wouldn't have been in the manner in which she received it had she really allowed there to be mistake on her end. She just 100% doubled down and was like blaming the defense for her talking to the FBI and giving them that statement.
I agree. I mean, she went down the road of bad choices and made bad choice after bad
every
choice.
turn. Yeah.
Every fork in the road she came to, she went all in, and she basically ruined her career, I would imagine, at this point.
Yeah. Well, there is also a question, I think, of maybe Guarino, maybe Keefe, maybe I'm talking about other DAs, Norfolk DA office, Mass State Police that were assigned specifically to that DA office. I wonder if it would make sense, Mr. Bederow, just hear me out, that they didn't do that, because they do it in all of the DA's office, like that there are certain ones that are assigned. Maybe there should be like switch positions, because they all think that you're set for life. If you're Michael Morrissey's, his Norfolk troop DA for that DA office, you stay there. And like potentially there would be a benefit for new people, new troopers that are, seasoned. We're not training new people there, but like I'm saying, maybe you could, switch where you go or something. Could they do anything like that? Or
they could. No, they could. I mean, you can't do it the way they do it now, because what happens is, especially in the culture of Norfolk County, it's a giant locker room. Okay. And these guys are entrenched for life, or so they thought.
Yeah.
Morrissey is the quintessential bureaucrat, right? I mean, Morrissey has been receiving public tax dollars for his salary, I would imagine, for longer than most of your viewers have been alive, probably. I mean, he's going on 30, 40, however many years of like sucking off the public dole. Okay. I mean, he's never had, a real job in the private sector since like 1980 something, if that.
Yeah.
These cops show up, they're entrenched in the office, and look at the way they communicate with each other. It's a locker room. Look at the way they support each other. They donate money. Now, they're not donating $1 million, but it's symbolic, okay? They're paying loyalty. They're kicking up the boss. It's a message. It's not, his campaign isn't going to sink or swim on, $100, but it's symbolic. You're kicking up to the boss. I mean, that's what they do in crime families, okay? Except it's much more than $100, obviously. But you're sending a message, I'm with you. And they all hang out with each other. And the fact that they feel comfortable enough to talk like that in these text messages, all men, by the way, no women.
Yes.
Okay. No women. Again, that they're in that locker room environment, and that breeds corruption because lawyers on some level have to supervise cops. Ultimately, prosecutors make the decisions. They're the ones that have to deal with the allegations of police misconduct or, those kinds of things. Now, are they going to do that when these are their drinking buddies? Or are you going to look the other way and say, well,
no.
Do you think that people in Morrissey's office and himself are the right people to be scrutinizing the conduct of Proctor Buchananic? The answer is obviously no, because look what he did. He gave that ridiculous statement a couple of years ago defending them, and it was all bullshit. It was all untrue. And he either lied or was fed lies, whatever. I mean, maybe he didn't lie. Maybe he was just told and he's the figurehead and it may not even be his fault, literally. But this is the culture that breeds corruption. And the only way to break it up is to break it up and separate it. And I would think all of these guys have to go. But the larger problem is the whole setup that Massachusetts has with the way that they encamp state police in the DA's offices like that. It's a big state. There's a lot of police. There's a lot of population. There's a lot of prosecutors. I don't know why they need to do it in the way that it's a breeding ground of corruption. In Norfolk, you see it.
Yeah, there has been it has been truly staggering to see the lengths in which, in specific cases, that we've opened our eyes to as the public, that the confidence and the undermining of our constitutional rights for our citizens has been just, heartbreaking, and that there were it was a systemic problem in that specific office, right? That had penetrated through everybody. And like you are saying, Mr. Bederow, like you come in and you think you have all of these positive thoughts of I'm here to serve, protect, and serve. I want to make a difference. And then it's insidious, right? When you see that type of corruption, it is like you're going to either fall in line or we're going to get you the F out. That's how that rolls, right? And I think that if Jersey boy, Jersey licious, Colonel Noble would like to talk some shit, I want you to back it up. Okay. And he's dancing. He's trying to foxtrot with us. So I'll let him dance for a minute, but I want to see results. I don't want to have, you give us lip service and then we still are putting new cogs in the wheel, because it will not have change until that wheel is broken.
They need to blow it up and fumigate it entirely. But the reality is you need to change the DA's office too. I mean, you have a DA who has been DA for however many years, and he has no ambition of going anywhere else. He has no ambition of doing anything. He's just sitting in the chair, leaning back, drinking wine and eating grapes and leaning back and, sitting there on the throne. And it's, look at the place. The place has no credibility in anything they do. Nobody takes them seriously. I mean, who, I'm not kidding with this, who really credits them or takes them as a credible office to do the right thing? I mean, I'll give you a perfect example. And I know nothing about it. I just saw like a byline. I don't even know what happened, so don't even ask me about it. But I understand the other day there was a death in police custody in Brookline.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about it other
Yeah.
than Brookline is nice. Okay. I know nothing about it. And, you know, they're like the state police and Norfolk DA are investigating. And every single public commentary or quote or everything I saw was like, forget it, you're screwed. It's, you know, it's going to be covered up. And I'm not even saying that's true. The point is the public clearly has zero confidence in the Michael Morrissey DA's office. They have zero confidence in his cabal of state police troopers. And you can't function in a civilized society where the entire population of the jurisdiction doesn't have any confidence, trust, or faith in the people that are charged with the task of keeping you safe.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you can't say it enough till we're blue in the face, but it's like, it's all got to be fumigated. And you've said that for a friggin' year. Okay. You've been saying that, you've been screaming that with me, with Mike, with, you know, everybody saying that, like, hey, this is a problem. The fish rots at the head and everything else needs to go.
One of the first things I saw when I first started watching this, you may or may not remember, over a year ago, was this reminded me of the Charles Hines Brooklyn DA's office. Now, Charles Hines is deceased and been out of office for, at this point, 12 years. But I had so many corrupt cases in Brooklyn, and you can, if you Google, you know, all the problems they had in the old Brooklyn DA's office, it is the biggest comp I can give you to what is happening in the Norfolk DA's office. And it's just, the whole place needs to go. I mean, you can't function if you just don't trust what anybody's doing.
Yeah. And there is no trust. And I mean, and when we say that this has gotten to millions of people, I mean, for the love of God and all things good and holy, it has been, you know, there have been multiple national interviews that are coming from not even within the camps, right? I'm talking about for the Reed case specifically. We have had jurors on multiple days, multiple platforms, TMZ, Court TV, Good Morning America, The Today Show, huge platforms. There were millions of people watching this trial every day. And some of us, two trials we've watched every day. And like Alan Jackson said on Saturday Night with Aiden, he said, I am the first attorney that has, you know, acquitted a client of murder twice. Right? Like unbelievable.
I mean, yeah, no, I mean, he's correct. And we've laughed about it in the past and say, where but Norfolk County could an acquitted murder defendant stand trial for murder? I mean, it's crazy. And they have so many problems, including just basic common sense and judgment on top of whatever else you may think. I mean, I don't know any other prosecutor's office who, even if they thought in a legal sense that the first trial, legally speaking, was a mistrial because the jury never published the verdict. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But nevertheless, every juror who came forward said we acquitted on 2 of the 3 counts. And by the way, Lally acknowledged that when they came to him. They told him that too. There was no dispute. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You, as a prosecutor, have got to be out of your fucking mind when everyone is telling you she was acquitted, she was acquitted, she was acquitted, to say, well, not technically. So we're going to fight this, dedicate all our resources to this, and we're actually going to retry her for murder again.
Yeah.
Because they thought they could, when the reality is, on what theory were you prosecuting her for murder? And by the time you got to the end of the case,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it came down to? It came down to a theory. Well, it's tantamount to being so reckless that it's no different than some idiot who throws a giant boulder off a bridge and hits somebody driving and kills them. And even though they didn't intend to kill them, it's such a degree of recklessness that we ought to give them a murder. And when that was actually being said in a summation, I actually, for the first time, felt bad for Brennan. I mean, that we got to that level, that this is where you've ended up. You've been investigating this. You've been doing all this. And you're saying it's, she's just so reckless by slamming the car in reverse on purpose. She intended to do that. She should have known, therefore guilty of murder. I mean, I don't know how you say that with a straight face.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask you also about Brennan, because it was a very interesting take to me to hear AJ say that he thinks he's like, okay. And we've always said, you and I have always had a respect for Hank Brennan because he is a qualified attorney. He's
I don't respect Hank Brennan. I respect some of his legal skills. I don't respect.
I was meaning like I have a respect that he was qualified for the job.
Yes.
That he was a qualified attorney, right?
Absolutely.
He was qualified to be that special prosecutor. That was the respect in which I had.
Totally qualified.
Totally qualified.
Mm-hmm.
Not a sham, or not somebody who would, falsify his credentials like maybe some of his experts, but neither here nor there. But to hear AJ say that he was a good attorney, he was very smart about Brennan, I was like, what the shit? Because for me, I put a lot of the onus, and still do, because I'm still pissy and I am thinking about shit and I'm perseverating. But I'm telling you that Laura McLaughlin, she knew all the shit. She knew she was running fucking circles around both of those boys, and she ran that ship. I don't give a shit if she made 120K and Lally made 140K and Hank is taking home over 300 now because he brought in his petty paralegal in an ill-fitting pencil skirt, but neither here nor there. There is a problem fundamentally, is I think that Hank Brennan isn't the brightest bulb in the, he's not the brightest bulb. And I also think that he didn't know all the shits, but the other two that sat right at that desk and did nothing with him, his second and third in command, they allowed so much fuckery to occur and in front of the jurors in this case that I still get angry about it, Mr. Bederow. I still get pissed.
So start with McLaughlin.
Yeah.
I mean, I've told you this before. She's the one who got up a year ago and said, I looked at the federal materials and there's basically very little exculpatory evidence in here. That's all you need to know about her. And in terms of her, making fair representations about the state of the evidence, no serious lawyer would say that. Of course she knows everything. And the reality is she's the kind of lawyer who, rather than demand to get paid, I would probably pay money to conduct a deposition of her at a 1983 lawsuit, and Lally and Brennan and Morrissey. And it's going to happen to all of them. And they're going to have real problems. Now, prosecutors get immunity. It's complicated. Tonight's not the night for this.
Right.
But they're material witnesses. They're still going to have to tell the truth and make a decision on what they're going to do or not do. But there are going to be some brutal and uncomfortable federal depositions that, presumably will be coming on down the line whenever, all the tea leaves would strongly suggest that it's coming. And I mean, to me, those are the four best depositions in the world: Morrissey, Brennan, Lally, McLaughlin. More than the cops, more than Proctor, more than anyone else, because they've made a lot of statements over the last 2 years. They've done a lot of weird things. A lot of people have said some things that don't really jibe. Officer Barros is a primary example of what they're saying. They claim to be unaware of a lot of things. Lally and the Sally Port video. I mean,
Yeah.
I could go on, and those depositions will be beyond brutal.
Well, I got to tell you something. I'm looking forward to it. Because again, a theme of maybe our night, maybe I could rename this stream to, what is done in the dark will come to the light, right? Because that is our founding principle, in our country, is that, like, hey, listen, we all in our Constitution, and it was just freaking Independence Day. I just want to reiterate that when there is just injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, and we have to stand and stand up for everyone's rights, and for, like, if you're hiding the ball, which was huge in the interview from Aiden, sorry to go back to that, but when AJ said he believed, and like, no question here, Mr. Bederow, he goes, I believe that there was information that wasn't turned over to me. Like, no freaking question, no doubt in his mind.
100%. Why would there be? I mean, I agree with that. I mean, obviously, he would know a lot more than I would from the inside, but that doesn't shock me at all. And he also, for all intents and purposes, without saying it, confirmed everything we talked about with Barrows.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
If you have any doubt in your mind that the prosecution suppressed information about what Barrows knew about the taillight from the defense, go back and rewatch the interview. And as I told you, had to be the case why the defense would never cross-examine Barrows, because they didn't know. That's why.
Yeah.
And you take the minor victory they had. You don't go for the home run, lest the witness say it was shattered and now you're screwed. So all of that will come out, and it's all going to come home to roost for these people. And in a deposition, there's no Judge Cannoni to protect them. These are federal depositions. They're going to be video recorded. All right.
Yeah.
There's no judge. And oftentimes, people will try to run to the judge to get a ruling. But in a deposition, the rules are much more liberal about, you got to answer the question. Even if you make an objection, you still have to answer the question. And there's going to be some really, really, really uncomfortable people who are going to get deposed, presumably. I mean, we don't know, but I think all signs are pointing to this. But by Karen's people, and it's going to be ugly.
And I wanted to ask you about Judge Cannoni, just bringing her up. When AJ, God bless him, because I loved hearing him speak as much as openly as he could about what it was like to get up and argue in front of her for the years in which he did. And, I mean, without batting an eyelash, he also stated that it felt, and it was noted, the bias. Well, here, I don't think he said bias, but he said that it was a clear note of what she was going to rule, because she ruled it the same way all the time. Any inch that she could give the Commonwealth, she every single time did. And, we knew that, we saw that, but there was a question that Aiden asked about the FBI, and that he would have allowed them to say it in any way that Judge Cannoni allow, right? Like, to say, like, either if it could have been the DOJ, could have been the, feds, it could have been the Attorney General's office, whatever it was, he would have been fine with that, but she still blocked it. And he said that every other judge out of the thousands or over 1,000 he had been in front of in his career, every other one of them would have allowed that in. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I think there's a few judges who at least initially might say, well, if I mention the Justice Department, where is this going? But I agree with him. There are ways that you can do it to just all we're trying to establish is that it's an independent law enforcement agency and it doesn't relate to us, and
Yes.
we had nothing to do with it, and the jury knows that. There could have been ways to do it. She never allowed it, and she never allowed it even after witnesses were uttering FBI, uttering Justice Department.
Yes.
And then for me, what just, I mean, made this into a cartoon is when Brennan sleazily suggested about their employer, you know, as if the defense team was their employer. And the reality is, you know, who engaged them, who hired them, but
Right.
they're contracted to do work for them. I mean, it was so misleading. And he's right. And, you know, there's the other example of, what was it, 49 out of 49 objections. That'll never happen again.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
that's statistically impossible. So yeah, I mean, I don't know how you can't look at it. And if you're Karen's attorneys, and I think in particular Alan, because I think there was at least the appearance of an animus against him more than the other ones. I mean, not that she was a fan of any of them really, but um, you know, she could have damaged their careers. She called them unethical. She accused them of lying. She accused them of suppressing discovery. These are things that, if true, can get you disbarred. And they're not going to get disbarred because it's not a big deal, because it didn't happen and it's nothing. But to see a judge act that way about him can only really lead you to one conclusion. You know, this is my courtroom, this is my fiefdom, and we do things a certain way. And
Yeah.
then here comes like a tornado from Hollywood. And, you know, with that comes attention. Obviously, Alan is one of the most media savvy attorneys you'll ever see.
Woo. That's the next
Obviously,
question.
he has a way to, like, you know, to be the straw that stirs the drink, so to speak, and get attention, and smooth and just effective at that. And it brought a whole new level of attention to this. And it appears she didn't like that.
No, no, she did not like. It's the outsider again, though. When Karen's entire case was that, like, you know, in theory, was that they pinned it on the girl. And why? Because she wasn't connected. She wasn't an insider, right? If John is gone, now she has no connection to any of them. And it would have been that we are protecting our own and insulated in our own little clusterfuck of bad deeds.
Listen, she was critical of, or obviously sensitive to the fact that the majority of lawyers, you know, 2 from LA, 1 from New York, should have been 2 from New
Who's
York.
from New York?
My point is, there's a reason why she wanted to bring in big city lawyers from out of town. Not that Boston's not a big city with incredible
right.
lawyers, but, you know, you want to go outside the box because out of town lawyers are going to be less susceptible to the game as
Yes.
it's played, you know, the Chinatown game, if you will. But notice how respectful the out of town lawyers always were, even as they were getting bludgeoned.
Yes.
So these are consummate professionals, but it's really the smartest move, I think, that Karen made, was going outside, because if you feel like you're getting localized corruption, that's the best way to fight it.
Yes. Yes. And like, I mean, the actual professionalism that was shown and the restraint by the defense team on all fronts, you know, was truly something to look at. The ability to stand in the fire and in the flame for an entirety of 2 trials, Mr. Bederow, like, holy shit. I mean, and Mr. Alessi for 1 trial, but with the intense research and development in which he did into arguments, he was critical and such an incredible man, in my opinion, as well. But there is something special about that. And I did want to just ask you, in kind of that same breath, about, there was a question about the media and about everything that Karen said, her words. And AJ told Aiden that every single thing, Karen Reed has never gone off script one day in her life. Okay. And I said, oh, because to me, that was jarring because I thought, I mean, and listen, it all played out correctly because her words, it was getting those words in front of the jury and it was her testimony. And they did hear her and they didn't bite on the bullshit of the Commonwealth. But my butt, I was clutching my pearls and clenching my butt the entire time that clips were played because I was like, put them in context, but it didn't matter.
I have a different take about that.
Oh,
that was
tell
a
me.
very fascinating part of the interview.
Okay.
And my take on that is the respect I already had for Alan going in, which was already as high as it can get, got that much higher because that's what a lawyer does. You deflect the criticism away from the client and you own it, you take the heat, and you
Nip it.
you the buck stops here. We're on the same team. We did this. Is it, I mean, do I think in hindsight or even in foresight that the statements were smart? No, I don't. But the way he handled that, I couldn't respect him more.
Right. Oh, okay.
That lawyers, I mean, to the very end, he's just fighting and defending his client, and that's what you want a lawyer to do. And to me, that's more important than whether everyone agrees or disagrees about all the statements, or there was never what was it, like an unscripted moment? I don't remember the exact words. There was never, or what, she never went rogue.
She never goes rogue. She's never gone rogue a day in her life. Yeah.
I mean, look, Karen, if you know her, she's very smart.
Very
That's all
smart.
true. I can tell you from personal experience what Alan said about her being like a walking encyclopedia.
Literally.
Knowledge of it is totally true. But she's not a lawyer, so you may not think things
Right.
But the reality is, even when we said maybe she shouldn't be doing those interviews, at the same time I would say it's not going to matter. They're not that bad. I mean, it's probably not the way you should do it. But if this guy thinks he's getting a conviction based on these 20 clips of Karen saying this or that, he should reevaluate his professional decisions, because you need real evidence, and that's not real evidence. And in fact, the jury actually asked the question, is this
real?
I mean, that's probably,
I mean, if you look at it like that, though,
yeah,
holy shit, when they come back and ask a question of,
is this even
evidence? Like, I mean, you want to talk about an actual, spitting in the face of the Commonwealth and Hank Brennan and him playing checkers, and absolutely the defense team playing at 4K chess.
Totally. And one of the other things I know I must have said to you for the last several months, that one of the reasons that I would be so supremely confident that this case is going to be an acquittal, number one, the evidence supports it. But number two, she's got a team of, incredibly talented lawyers who are better lawyers than the prosecutors in every way, strategically, in my view, skill set, but also in my view, credibility, earnestness, taking the jury by the hand and leading them to where they want to go. I think they're just earnest people. And, the most dangerous kind of lawyer is the kind like them who are really, really skilled, but really, really likable in the eyes of a jury and trustworthy in the eyes of a jury. And, that was never going to be Brennan and Lally.
No. And I feel like we had this conversation before about who had the better trial. And I mean, we know that it was a mistrial for trial 1, and then Karen was acquitted on all death-related charges with Officer John O'Keefe in trial 2, a complete victory other than an OUI. But in trial 1, I have always said that there was a more succinct and a more convincing pathway for jurors to get somewhere if they chose to go via Adam Lally's route, right? It was the car was in reverse at 24.2 miles per hour. He was struck. There was that tiny bump. It was the Toyota tech stream data. It was keep it simple, stupid for like, here's the tail light, here is this, and it just, he at least had a firm theory of when Officer John O'Keefe was struck, and there was no specificity at all in trial 2 presented, even after, $325,000 paid to Aperture to finger paint. There was nothing. It said he, Judson B. Welcher, other than spreading his load around, was also letting us know that it could have happened at greater than 8 miles per hour, but no one said shit about when are you saying this occurred? And that was I believe, one of the most crucial parts, because they couldn't say it, but at least Adam Lally did. So do you think, who had a better case in your opinion?
That's a really interesting argument. I didn't think of it like that. The first thing I'll say, just as a comedy thing, in the interview, when they asked Alan and he said Lally, I love that because, he hates Brennan and he got a nice dig, and good for him. And it's well-deserved. And the reality is Lally did get 8 or 9 jurors who theoretically want to convict on a count. By calling all those witnesses, Lally at least was in a position to say, I marched up an army of 14 witnesses who said he didn't go in the house. So now what? Knowing that the defense at that time really was kind of a game of Clue more than the second trial, about, it was Brian, Colonel Mustard with the candlestick in the conservatory, or Brian Higgins with the weight bench in the basement.
In the basement.
So, in that way, I guess you could say, Brennan is the better lawyer in terms of trying a case, but tactically and strategically, Brennan's biggest flaw, I think, is his arrogance. He did what lawyers and prosecutors in particular can never do. He wrote checks he could never cash.
Yeah.
He wants to talk about tech data and, all this crap. And where was it? He locked into a finite timeline, like you said, which means if the defense can crack that timeline, you're screwed. And guess what? It became apparent very early the timeline doesn't work because John O'Keefe's phone was being manipulated by John O'Keefe. So what did they do? Well, we'll just have, Shannon Burgess just move the timeline a minute and I'm back in business. You can't prosecute a case like that. You can't wear the white hat and be the prosecutor and use witnesses who shapeshift in the middle of trial like that, who lie on their resumes, who finger paint, and you could go on and then say, I'm not going to call Proctor, I'm not going to call all these people because trust me with this. And obviously hindsight is 2020, but the argument that Lally tried a better case, there is more merit to it than I thought previously. And again, if it's results, yes. Just based on results, you could say, he did get a majority of people who wanted to convict of something, but we also don't know what were they going to convict on, like up and down that count too.
But does that matter? Because it was something. Do you know what I mean? Like, and in my opinion, although Hank Brennan did cut out a lot of the fat, and there was a lot of fat. There was who, if anyone, was driving the ambulance. For the love of God, we'll never get. If I heard one more time about it snowing, like I don't want to talk about the game and the high tops, but he painted the picture and provided every single person that was at that house said, we didn't see Officer John O'Keefe come in, right? Now, this is repetition in front of the jury. Then we're having also the definite, although it was absolutely broken down by AJ of Trooper Paul, where he said, when I was looking at that text stream data, now I don't know shit about shit with text stream data. I got a guy named Tony over at Ira Lexus Danvers, and he had to tell me about like what I was even looking at, because or what it meant. There was so much question, but if he was certain that, like, you see this dip, that was where the pedestrian strike occurred. And Hank Brennan never even broached that, Mr. Bederow, like, ever.
Listen, I don't think he tried a very good case. I mean,
Yeah.
and I thought
So was he a good hired gun?
he was completely miscast in the role of prosecutor. Because you just, again, your credibility is your only stock in trade. You write checks you can't cash. You have that hyper aggressive turn off type attitude. You attack witnesses that are professionals. They're not lying fact witnesses. They're witnesses you want to demonstrate are wrong on science. I think at the end of the day, the taxpayers just got fleeced. I mean, between him, and he's the kind of prosecutor who says, I'm okay hiring Shannon Burgess. He knew about it. He didn't ask him about his academic credentials. That was and if it was a surprise, that's a lack of due diligence as well. So it's like, damned if you do, damned if you don't. He knew what Welcher was doing in terms of, if experiment is even the word, versus what the ARCA guys were doing. He knew all of those things. And I mean, that's the way I can look at it, is there was never a world in which Karen Reed was going to get convicted, no matter what. And it was not going to happen because the evidence, there was so much reasonable doubt in. And I think one of the things that Alan said was, I agreed with the other night. I don't know that he like literally proved Karen innocent, but they kind of did.
Yeah.
They had no burden to do anything. But if the goal of the exercise was even to say, by a preponderance of the evidence, which is more likely, I would say the needle would go to the defense based on the science and the engineering. No question.
And the medical, yes, medical is part of science. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And
So
isn't that what civil cases are, is preponderance of evidence?
Preponderance, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't, this lawsuit that's going on now is small potatoes. It's money. Do
you think there would be a settlement? Do you think that Karen would ever settle, or will she go till the wheels fall off?
No, because
I
believe, I don't know anything, but
yeah,
I believe she will file a 42 USC 1983 lawsuit, and I believe she will full throttle clear her name. She's got the right people in her corner to do it, both in terms of lawyers and supporting in other capacities. They have the high ground right now. All the cops coming after her are getting in trouble. And the reality is, the issue in the lawsuit really is more to the bars.
Yeah.
The problem is, even if the bars overserved her, if that's even what they did, you still have what is a causation problem. She still would have had to cause John O'Keefe's death. And if there's no car accident, I get news for you. She didn't cause his death.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I
there's no there. I'm just saying, like, if it were, and of course, I don't know shit about, I don't know anything about it, but I was thinking, like, this being more years of your life, more legal fees, more this, and it's like, it's not, to me, because it's not criminal, I'd be like, if this is all you were looking for in the first place is $50K or something, I'd be like, and not to say that okay, here's the only thing is, I would not ever settle that said I did anything like to cause a death. But like, if you had emotional harm and I was with him that night, maybe I would say, like, to make it go away. I don't know. I don't know if there's any even merit to what I just said, but
civil lawsuits are designed generally to settle. They do.
Oh,
Having said that, I don't know what the exact percentage is, but very few civil trials actually. This would be the one. I mean, if I'm her, I get all Godfather, but you can have my offer now, Senator. My offer is this: nothing.
oh,
Godfather 2, no, Senator, no, you don't remember that.
I don't remember it, but I liked it. All right.
You, some people will know. You can have my offer now, Senator. My offer is nothing. Now the bars can do whatever they want. If they want to, well, look at that. You just put that up at the
Richie. Yep.
I mean, if they want to cut loss and just say the hell with it, but I don't think she will. I don't know anything.
Yeah.
I'm privy to it, but I don't think this is that.
Okay. And the final question, because I know it's getting dark out and I appreciate you. I can't even believe we got to talk to each other tonight. You made
really
my night.
It's really
You're
nice.
Okay?
Yeah, no, it's beautiful out here.
Oh, when'd you get your hair done?
I didn't. It's the moonlight.
Oh, I was gonna say that is ooh. I thought that I just thought that you maybe got a haircut.
I didn't get a fresh cut for court, but by the way, I was told like it wasn't even though they filmed it, it wasn't on TV. It was just but which makes you feel bad because Bradle showed up today with a very fresh cut.
Oh, fresh to death. Bradle is looking good too. You guys are good looking dudes up there. Instead of decorated dudes, we'll call you.
Well, it's good that you don't see the video because we both had khaki suits today, and it's a little, a little.
Yeah. Well, you were matching. It's adorable. It's adorable. There was a comment made by AJ, and it was Aiden that stated, hey, hindsight, it all worked out the way it was supposed to, but you would have been killing. You would have not been able to sleep at night, and you would have not killed yourself, but like you would have ended it if you didn't call Proctor and this was a problem for the jury, right? If this had ended any other way and you didn't call Proctor, it would have been shame on you and like career, or they would have wanted to just pack it up. And AJ said something that was so profound to me, and like talk about him being an incredible lawyer. He said that although my ego would have wanted to assassinate him, basically. He didn't say that, but he was like, my ego would have
wanted a dream crop. You want to just eviscerate him. Yeah.
Eviscerate him, not assassinate. God forgive me. Sorry. He wanted to do it, but if the Commonwealth would not call their own lead investigator, he felt that profound message needed to be sent to the jury, and it was on them, and they weren't telling the defense shit. Like they weren't telling them how they had to do their case. And I thought that it says a lot for him to say, like, yes, I mean, he had been terminated since there had been shit. There was so much shit that could have been pulled and should have been, I don't know, to me, should have been pulled. But that was such a perfect way to put it. But then I go back, Mr. Bederow, and think to myself, what in the fuck? We didn't even get the missing witness instruction. So that fucked me all the way up because I was like, all right, we didn't even get that. And you guys didn't call them. So that was a very high risk, but the reward was there in the end.
Proctor and Higgins, I guess to some extent too.
Yeah.
Really interesting calls. And my view was and is, I would have called him. But at the same time, when we were having all those discussions, I also said, it's a close call. Like, I totally get the thinking not to. And then there was also the other caveat, which is we're not in the room. We're not, that's an interesting, that's a conversation I would have loved to have been a part of in terms of in back and forth. The decision not to call him because they had all the science is a totally rational, good one. Not just because we won. I mean, the reality is when you win, it's the right decision. That's an argument. But beyond that, it's a totally, totally legitimate, understandable position to say we're going purely with the science. I thought there was room to do it. I didn't think that, Brennan cross-examining him would do anything. But, in all fairness, they know what they're doing. They're living it. They know things we don't know. And you could totally, if we talked it through back and forth, at some point, all of us, me, you, could be convinced it's not necessary, because it wasn't necessary. But the hard part is reaching that conclusion when you don't know the result. But of course it was his call, and you would have to live or die with that. But the reality was, even though a lot of us thought you call him, I'm 99% certain, and must have said this too, it's not going to affect the outcome, because the evidence of reasonable doubt is still there. Now, the thing that I found interesting was not calling him, and maybe my memory is off, but I don't think so. They never clobbered that in summation. Like, they never said, never called. I mean, they could have just pounded that.
They didn't. I feel like they didn't murder it.
Yeah, no, that was surprising. Again,
yeah.
I mean,
there was so much else, to get through too.
Clear. That's as good a summation as you're ever going to see. Okay, let's be clear. So you're nitpicking at a level that's like, what are you doing? That was like just masterclass A+ summation. But it was a little bit surprising that they didn't take that and rub their nose in it again and again.
Yeah, just really make them pay with the paper, like you know what I mean? Like, to say, like, put your nose in that shit, because. But I feel like the Brennan with the hoodie was like huge for them, and it had just happened, and they were like, well, "Fuck, I need to put this in." I don't know. I don't know what was going on.
That I loved in the summation. Yes. And that was something that needed to be in there. Call him out. He's not wearing the white hat. He's not being honest with the jury. Jurors hate prosecutors that do stuff like that, and giving them that attention, I thought, was incredible.
I love that. Homos, heteros, and Mr. Mark Bederow. That's our round to death.
You're gonna make me upset-ero. Oh, there.
Oh no. Okay, you're all Bederow again. I apologize. But there is just I did want to ask, when Aiden was also this was what it was. It was about the index cards, because we didn't get to see that from, like, I know that Microdots and Richie did post it, so everyone go watch that part, because that was such a powerful visual aid of reasonable doubt, right?
Yeah.
And like, just a masterclass. And again, AJ really, really should be in the books of client advocacy and of summations, because it was just that spectacular. But for me, I wanted to say, remember when you make fun of me for making the notes? Okay. Remember when you said, she puts it on paper. She's still writing on paper. He puts it on his little note. He does his summations on index cards.
Well, then I'm not sure that helps your argument, because he's like in the game. I mean,
Well, I'm in the game.
No, listen. It's interesting, because lawyers are the biggest thieves in the world. Okay. And so, like, all good lawyers are always curious how other good and great lawyers do things. And I'm fascinated by this thing. And that's something I'll pick his brain about. Like, what are you doing there? Like, how is this coming together with the index cards and, structure? I mean, what he's doing is structuring chronologically how he wants to do it. I get it. But, I don't know many other people who do that. So I'm kind of fascinated by that, actually. And it totally works, obviously.
Listen, if you get the answer, I like, call your girl, because I need to know, because that was, me, I was like, Aiden, I was like, get it, because that is so interesting to me. And especially like in the day of technology, where all the lawyers in that defense table, because you were there for trial one, is when you see all of their laptops up. Mr. Yannetti has apparently the vision of, we've got to get him new glasses because I'm reading it. And it's hilarious. His font is 79. I go, what the fuck are we doing? But then I see Bob Alessi, and he's got one of those new lawyer, the handy dandy shits, like that you can write, like, it goes on this thing that does all your cases and it stays in a fucking, scoobity bee bop. I go, wait a minute. I want that, because if I could write it with a pen, then I would still, in my brain, Mr. Bederow, what it is me putting the pen to paper is how, like, I commit it to memory, or there's something weird with like my wiring, right? So I was wondering if maybe if I got one of the stylus pens and if I could write it on like whatever that is, that whatever machine, then I wonder if it would still commit to it. And then I could go back and then not have, 13 composition notebooks for trial 2 or 4 5-star notebooks, 3 subject for trial 1.
Yeah, I mean that tablet that he was using, that takes a lot of courage to get. I mean, I'm sure it takes a lot of practice.
Remarkable, yes.
I mean,
thank you, labor in Seattle.
When you're writing with that thing, it's big, and it's
yes.
I don't know if I would want to do that in like real time. Although, if you know what you're doing, it works. I mean, the thing I like, I guess, about the index cards when they were doing that is, again, that is the best way if you're trying to see everything at once and organize it in a way. So I may try to steal that and see if that works for me.
Yes. I think that's fantastic. And I was just like, a man after my own heart, that he still likes to have things like, in a day and age of everything being online and on computers. Like, I think, I don't know, I'm just like, call me old fashioned and call me a little bit of a dork, but I like it and I don't care. And you're not changing me at this stage of the game. But I just think that seeing that pile of those index cards as it was displayed in that, visual by Richie. Richie was the one who did it. Like, how fucking awesome that it comes up and it's coming out to you, and you're seeing like one of those cards was enough to be reasonable doubt. And by the time the end of it, what was there, like 40 cards in the pile?
Yeah, I mean, what he did was like the tech way. The other thing that I know we must have talked about this, about, putting a pebble on the scale and then another one and another one.
Yes.
And it's just a different form of the same thing, but it's really effective. And when you put it on a board like that and you're just stacking notes on notes, there comes a point where you say all they need is reasonable doubt. And like they were saying, it kind of feels like they're showing you not just reasonable doubt, but it's more likely than not that they're right. Like, they're not just poking holes, they're proving she didn't do it.
Yeah. And eloquently and effectively. Also, another thing that came out, I keep saying this is the last thing. The other thing was that Aiden and AJ confirmed that 18 out of 18 jurors would have found Karen Reed not guilty. Didn't matter who the Commonwealth, bingo wheeled, Clerk Jim, I got something in my pocket for you. It didn't matter who they chose. 100% of those jurors had Karen Reed not guilty. Ain't that some shit, Mr. Bederow?
It's not surprising. I mean,
not at all.
It's certainly encouraging that, you have faith in people to pay attention and follow evidence and follow the legal instructions and all that. But I mean, that's pretty humiliating for the other side, obviously. But I mean, that's not at all surprising to me, because this was as flawed a case as you'll ever see. I mean, you just don't see prosecutors going forward when they have so many holes that they can't fill. And the chutzpah for these people to think that they were just going to roll over that because they played clips of what they called admissions and, had a few people say, like Jen McCabe and whoever else, that, I hit him, that somehow is going to trump the irrefutable science, both medical, the engineering side, the physics. I mean, these people are just, I think they were delusional.
Yeah.
Never a way that she was going to get convicted. It wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, it feels as though to me that I was getting to a point that I was feeling like, am I out of touch, or are these, or is the Commonwealth like in a butterfly effect, right? Like, what is happening? Are we in an alternate timeline? Because it just felt so out of touch, and it felt like more like there was never ending layers. And let's be perfectly clear, Mr. Bederow, we're still unpeeling layers, and there are still layers to be unpeeled that maybe would be able to come out in a US 1983 claim, because there's still more shit. There is more there that needs to be brought to light, disinfected and brought to light, of what this Commonwealth was, and this DA's office in particular, were doing behind closed doors, but also out in public. And I think that, the depths of which this runs, I think will shock us all. And like, we're really kind of just at the beginning stages. And that is why, although yes, we've made it through criminal for Karen, and that is why I just back up now. Moving forward, I am here to back up Aiden. I've always backed up Aiden, but it was like, I had to be free in Karen Reed at the time. And now I am going to be free in Turtleboy, because if Karen is innocent in the eyes of the law, then that, in my opinion, 100% makes Aiden innocent in the eyes of the law. Because you want to talk about causation, babe. 1 + 1 cannot equal 48. And that is what the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is trying to shove down Aiden's throat and the rest of us, to say, you still have grounds and can still move forward, when the entire stemming of it came from an alternate case. So I think it's all bullshit. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
And it is upsetting. It's upsetting to me. And I see them putting more force behind this because they look dumb, and because you are going to make them look dumber. And I love that about you. And I am looking forward to it.
Look, we don't choose to be here. We just go where they send us. And if that's how it's going to be, then, we have to punch our way out, and we'll do that. That's what lawyers do. But yeah, no, it's going to get worse for them on many levels. There was a lot of people out there today.
Yes.
A lot of people. I mean, I haven't been in, again, for the misdemeanor, I didn't come out for that. And so I don't even think I've been to one of these in quite a few months, actually, in person, as opposed to Zoom. But by my recollection, the amount of people that were out there today was a lot. They didn't all go home because Karen was done. And in fact, I think it's going to be the opposite effect. I think it's going to grow. I think people realize what this is. Again, there are things I can't say because I'm restricted, that I think will end up encouraging more support from people, and realizing that, this is unjust.
Yes.
And I think it will just grow and grow. And at some point, this is just becoming untenable for them.
Yeah. And that's just what I've tried to be encouraging to my loveys. And when I'm home, I'm going to be going. And I just want to make sure that Aiden knows that we're here to support him. And, because he was there from day one for Karen, and he was the first. And I just, we've still got work to do. And, we've got Karen freed, and we've still got Turtleboys to free. So we're far from done. And I always love to talk to you, and you are my favorite. You are my best friend from out of town. And, I'm glad I shot my shot.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, I was going to go home tonight. I couldn't go home just because I didn't want to drive. So naturally, like anyone else, I decided to go have a fine steak 2 nights in a row. You probably shouldn't do that. It's not good for you. And, I was going to come back, watch the Red Sox game, And then it occurred to me, I remembered yesterday, they don't have Nesson at this place, which is.
I'm putting you up there every time so that I can get, you know.
Yeah. So then I said, I got to do something now. So,
Yes.
Here I
was
am.
like, I could be there. I was like, oh, if I said, you just say the word and I'll be ready at 7:30. And you were like, all right, let's go. I was like, yes. Best night ever.
It's not far from my neck of the woods where I grew up. So it's like kind of my western suburbs, if you will. So, I kind of, it's my kind of area.
Well, you're the best to ever do it. I appreciate your face. And I wish you a wonderful night, Mr. Bederow.
Okay.
All right. Bye.
Bye. Bye. Take care.
Loveys. Is he the best? What are we doing? I can't. He's my guy. And he just comes on the stream and he talks all the shit with us. And it makes my day. So with that being said, I think that someone in the chat said that Aiden is going to be going live. So I'm going to get off tonight, but go support Turtleboy, Loveys. I'm going to put the defense fund for him into the chat. And if you can, give $5, give anything that you can. Turtleboy needs us now, and we've got his back. Okay. I love your faces. I'll talk to you soon. Bye, guys.